Hello and welcome to Into the Woods with Holly Worton. This podcast has evolved over the 5+ years since it first launched. From now on, I'm going to be talking about deepening your connection with yourself, taking inspired action, and really trusting yourself and your intuition. And also mindset, of course, but mindset of all kinds, not just business mindset. I think. Things are changing for me, as you may have noticed if you've been following me online or listening to this podcast, so anything goes here. I hope you stay along for the ride. Thank you so much for joining us today, and now let's get into this week's episode. Hello and welcome to the Into the Woods podcast, episode 364. This is your host, Holly Worton, and I'm back with another solo episode. Today I am talking about personal growth and personal development through outdoor adventures, particularly solo outdoor adventures. So this is a really important topic to me because, as you know, I spend a fair amount of time in the outdoors and I love hiking long distance trails and I love just being in the woods and being in the outdoors and going camping and walking, and I love all that stuff. So I'd never really thought about how much my outdoor adventures had contributed to my personal growth and my personal development in the last 10 or so years. But I think it really has. And I wanted to have this conversation with you today because outdoor adventures are not just fun and exciting, and they expand us out of our comfort zone. They help us grow. They help us evolve as people. And I think that maybe for some people, if we looked at it from that perspective, and if some people really realize just how life-changing this can be, not just walking a long-distance trail, but just getting outdoors and doing things, particularly alone. If a lot of people realized how much that can contribute to your personal growth and your personal development, I think people might be more inclined to do them more because, like I said, it's not just fun and exciting, it's also great for your personal growth. So, what are you going to learn today? I'm going to talk about how getting outdoors can also be part of our inner work and our personal growth. Talk about the life skills that you can improve through getting outdoors, particularly on your own. I discuss how it will give you the time and space for reflection and to do that inner work. Talk about facing fears and how this can help you to let go of your fears. And finally, the obvious things like how improving your physical fitness, your mental health, increasing a greater respect for the environment. Like there are lots of kind of practical, obvious things that outdoor adventures can give you. So let's get into today's episode. I had a couple of episodes lately that have been probably helped me get to this point. So episode 354 with Stephen Marriott, we talked about the life-changing magic of walking a long-distance trail and how life is often before and after walking a long-distance trail because it can be such an important part of our growth and such an important part of our personal development. And then a few episodes later, Adam Wells came on and we talked about how to prepare for your first long-distance trail. And we also talked about how being on a long-distance trail can create kind of a liminal space, kind of outside the normal realm of normal life, and create that space for personal growth and development. So those are a couple of good conversations that I've had recently with other people that I think are complementary to this episode, and I think have definitely led me to think more about what happens on the inside when I do the outer work of walking a long distance trail. But I think the important thing here is that getting outdoors and having outdoors adventures doesn't necessarily mean walking the Camino de Santiago or walking the South Downs Way or walking the Ridgeway or doing something that requires walking days on end on your own. I think that's an excellent way to grow and to develop, but I think you can also learn a lot from just getting out on a day hike or going camping or doing a shorter adventure. So I've been blogging a lot lately about outdoorsy stuff. And I mean, I know that's going to be one of my main focuses from here on out. One of the main things I'm going to be focusing on is outdoor adventures, personal growth through outdoor adventures, and what it can give you. So I've got several blog posts that are related to this that I'm probably going to mention throughout this episode, and I'll link to them in the show notes. But let's get into the topic. So what is this concept of personal growth through outdoor adventure? I have learned so much about myself through hiking on my own, camping on my own, walking a long distance trail on my own. And I think to me, doing this stuff alone has really ramped up the intensity of what I've learned through my outdoor adventures. Yes, you can absolutely learn from doing this stuff with other people, and if you don't feel comfortable having outdoor adventures alone, then definitely start by doing them with other people. And hopefully at some point, you will feel safe enough and confident enough to have these adventures on your own, because I really think that's kind of a next level thing if you're looking to grow even more. And a lot of women that I talk to are really concerned about, it's safe to go hiking on your own? Is it safe to go camping on your own? And I recently wrote a blog post about that called Solo Hiking for Women, Staying Safe in the Outdoors. And I'll link to that in the show notes. And to be honest, most of the article is about how to be safe in the outdoors as a human being, different things that you need to learn, different things that you need to be aware of. And I also do address the thing that I think is probably women's number one fear of going hiking or camping alone, and that is the two-legged predator or being attacked by another human being. That doesn't happen very often, especially the more remote you get in the wilderness or in the outdoors, the less likely that is to happen. Most people who are looking to attack women are not going to spend hours or days hiking to get to a remote location to see if a woman happens to come by on her own that they can attack. Yeah, you're probably going to be safe, two-legged predators. So honestly, I don't think that's something to be worried about, but it is something that I address in that blog post. And I think that there are a lot of things you can do to help you to be more confident about going outdoors on your own, because I really do think it's an important experience to have. And it's something that can really stretch you outside of your comfort zone. So what can you get in terms of inner work through outdoors adventures? Because like I said, I think a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to go hiking. It's great exercise. I'll get outdoors. I'll get some sunshine. It's good. And it is. But it can also help us grow inward, like personal growth kind of thing. So it can help us increase our self-trust, increase our self-awareness, our self-knowledge, our self-confidence, our self-reliance. This is because when we get outdoors, whether that's with someone else or alone, we come across situations that we don't come across in our usual life, unless you live in the woods and you have a very rustic lifestyle. You're walking on trails. You might come across unexpected things like mud or cliffs or slippery trails or inclement weather or stuff that you don't normally come across when you're sitting in home at your office or whatever it is that you experience indoors or wherever you are indoors. So by getting yourself out there into the outdoors and having an adventure, you're increasing your self-confidence and your self-trust by getting out there, having these new experiences, surviving them, and then having more confidence to do them again. And also self-reliance. Now, obviously, if you go on a guided walk or hike or camping trip or other adventure with someone else, whether there's a guide who is facilitating the experience, a lot of times we tend to kind of let go of our sense of personal responsibility and place that responsibility on the leader or the guide. I'm actually, as I record this earlier today, I was just getting ready for a course that I'm on with the Woodcraft school, and I'll link to that in the show notes. But I'm doing an outdoors course on wildlife identification and tracking. And I'm super excited about this course. I signed up for it last year, and it was supposed to start in April, but of course, because of COVID, it kept getting like pushed, and now this weekend is the first weekend that we're having it. So I'm super excited about that. But because this is an adventure that's like through a school and it's going to be guided with the teacher and I know who he is, I've already realized that I've kind of let my guard down in terms of packing. Like I was packing my first aid kit and I was like, do I pack just the little one or do I pack the big one? And I'm packing the little one because I know that he's going to have a gigantic outdoors first aid kit and I can rely on that. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like if you know that someone else is going to be carrying a lot of gear that will duplicate, you don't want to duplicate your own gear. So that's not necessarily a bad thing. But I am aware of the fact that I am relying on him for certain things. That if I were going alone or if I were the leader of a group, I would definitely be carrying a bigger first aid kit. So self-reliance is another thing you can learn because when you're alone in the outdoors or whether you're with someone else in the outdoors, if it's a friend or a peer or a family member, you're more likely to have to deal with stuff on your own. There's not going to be the teacher or the guide to handle things for you. So I think that's a really important part of growth. Self-knowledge. When you're out on a trail, you learn things about yourself, especially when you're alone, especially if you're walking a long distance trail. I've learned so much about myself, about how I like to pace myself, how often I like to take breaks, how often I like to eat or not eat. I learn a lot about myself and how I like to plan my adventures for the future, but I also have a lot of time for reflection, and I learn a lot about myself on the inside. If you've read my book, Alone on the South Downs Way, so I've got a new edition of it that was released this year, where I share both of my journeys, my 2016 journey, or 2015 journey, and my 2019 journey along the South Downs Way. And in the first one, it triggered so much of my crap and my irritability and my fears and my stuff. And I talk about that a lot, especially on the first day. Getting outdoors and getting yourself in these new environments can really trigger stuff for you. And I think that's a good thing because they bring stuff up to light that you can then work on. So that's a really, really good aspect of learning. Also, it increases your sense of personal responsibility. And I think this is a really, really good thing. Personal responsibility is something that I never really thought about until I got into the coaching world about 9 years ago. And I started thinking more about the importance of this, about taking responsibility for your own life. I really feel like for the first part of my life, I just let things happen to me. I didn't necessarily plan to have the experiences that I wanted to have. And I also blamed things on other people. And I think that when you have outdoors adventures, you've got to take responsibility for your own experience, especially, again, if you're not going on something that's guided by someone else. If you are planning the trip, whether you're alone or you've got a friend or family member with you, you've got to plan. You've got to take responsibility for the experience. If someone gets injured, you've got to deal with it. If you forgot to bring a lighter to light your campfire, that's your problem. That's 100% on you. So you've really got to learn to take responsibility for your actions. If you forget the matches or the lighter, that's, no one else's fault but yours. And I think it's important to not blame yourself for things, but to learn to take responsibility. Oh, I forgot this thing. Well, I'm not going to forget it next time because I'm going to add it to my packing list. And I have very elaborate packing lists for each different type of outdoors adventure. And I will link to those in the show notes. You can get those. You can download them there's no opt-in for them. But I've written several blog posts on the exact gear that I use, and I also include the checklists. And they're in Word docs, so you can download them yourself and you can tailor them to your needs. And these are checklists that are always a work in progress for me. I'm always changing and adding and adjusting new things. So again, personal responsibility is a really important part of life. It's important. It's an important aspect of creating the life that you want and having the experience that you want by taking responsibility for what you do, what you don't do, the mistakes that you make, and learning from your mistakes so that you don't make them again. So there's so many things that you can learn from having these outdoors adventures. And again, you can learn this stuff from just a day hike, because if you forget your gloves and it's a winter hike and your hands are freezing and you have to walk all day with your hands in your pockets, you're going to remember that and you're going to add gloves to your checklist for next time. Or you're going to create a checklist so that you have this stuff and you don't forget it. And I think that creating that sense of personal responsibility within the context of outdoors adventures will also have a ripple effect into other parts of your life. You will start to take more responsibility for other parts of your life. Because I think personal responsibility is an attitude that a lot of people don't have. And it's really good to cultivate, but it's like your comfort zone. Like you expand your comfort zone in one area of your life and it kind of naturally expands in all areas of your life. And I think personal responsibility is like that as well. Once you start taking responsibility for yourself in your outdoors adventures, you will start taking responsibility for yourself in all areas of your life. It's like a muscle that you develop. Next, you can improve life skills. So goal setting, achievement. One of the things that you can do is set a goal for how many miles you're going to hike. So if you plan your hike in advance and you say, create like or you either download a GPX file or you create your own GPX file and follow that route on your own, or whether you say, I'm going to go out hiking for 6 hours today or whatever, you're setting a goal for how long you want to be outdoors, how long is your route going to be, and then achieve it. Now, the thing about stuff like this goal setting in the outdoors is you've got to achieve your goals. It's like when I'm walking a long distance trail and I say, okay, so I'm walking the South Downs Way, I'm starting in Eastbourne, starting in Eastbourne, let's say I'm starting in the east, and I'm going to get to Alfriston at night. I've got to get there. There's no other option because that's where I'm staying the night. And it's a ridge. Well, it's not necessarily a ridge, but you're in the middle of nowhere and there aren't a lot of escape routes. So, of course, if you get injured, you're going to take an escape route. But if you're not injured, you got to keep going. You can't just call a taxi and have it pick you up on the trail. If you do call a taxi, it's probably going to pick you up at least a mile or 2 or 3 off the trail. So you've got to achieve that goal. Again, unless you get injured. And the same thing goes with a hike. Like even if you plan a circular hike near your area, you do need to be aware of escape routes and what to do if something goes wrong. But otherwise, you're going to have to get home because you're probably going to be in the middle of the woods, away from a road, away from a place where you can call for help. A lot of times there isn't mobile connectivity. So you need to achieve your goals. You need to, in most instances. What other life skills can you improve through outdoors adventures? Planning skills. Planning your route that you're going to walk on. Planning your hike. Planning your stuff that you're going to bring with you, especially if you're like wild camping or even car camping. If you forget something, that's going to really put a damper on your adventure. And it could even potentially be dangerous. So you really need to heighten your planning skills when you're doing outdoor stuff. And you can learn new skills like navigation, how to use a map and compass, how to do wild camping, how to walk a long distance trail. You learn all kinds of new stuff through outdoors adventures. And also problem solving, because stuff can always go wrong when you're outdoors and you're going to have fewer resources at your disposal. So if you get injured, you're going to need to know where's the nearest escape route, how to get off your trail, how to get off your route, and how to get help that you need. If you're in a lowland area condition, you're probably not going to have mountain rescue available to you. And you probably won't have people available to come and evacuate you. So you're going to need to figure out how to solve that problem on your own. Having said that, I think if you're going to have any kind of outdoors adventures, it's really useful to have learned outdoor first aid. And that's one of the reasons why I carry often such a big first aid kit with me, especially when I was walking with groups. Because I'm very aware of all the stuff that can go wrong. And to be honest, I wasn't even aware of all the stuff that could go wrong before I took outdoors first aid for the first time. And I've done that twice now because you've got to renew it every 3 years. But even if you're not guiding groups and you're just going to be going outdoors on your own, if it's something you think you're going to be doing a lot of, it's a really good skill to have, outdoors first aid. It's a 2-day course. I think it's 16 hours, 8 hours each day, and you will learn a lot of really practical stuff. So that's another skill you can learn, outdoors first aid. And that will also help you with your problem solving if something goes wrong. So problem solving is a great life skill that, like I said, if you can solve problems with limited resources in the outdoors, that's going to help you think creatively to solve problems in your everyday life and in your workplace. So that's another great skill to have. Going outdoors can also give you that time and space for reflection. You are alone. not necessarily alone, but let's assume you're going to be alone, because at some point I would love for you to get outdoors alone and do something on your own, whether that's hiking, camping, or walking a long distance trail. It gives you the time and space for things to come up, stuff that might trigger you, stuff that you're going to have to work through. You will have the time and space to have these difficult conversations with yourself in your mind that you might not have if you're really busy in your everyday life, as most of us are. A lot of times we are so busy just like getting through each day and doing the work that we need to do, and that we don't have time for this stuff to come up. But if you're alone on a trail, that stuff will come up. It might take a couple hours, but it will probably come up. And I think that's one of the great benefits of walking a long distance trail on your own, is that you've got many days on end for this stuff to come up and to deal with it and to work through it and to grow through it. I often say that walking alone is like mobile meditation, because I'm walking, putting one step in front of the other, and I'm meditating on stuff. I'm not walking doing mantras usually. Sometimes I do. But, it gives you that space for stuff to come up. And I think that's really, really valuable. And I think a lot of us don't give ourselves that time and space for reflection on life, on work, on what we want to be experiencing in this lifetime. Outdoor adventure can also give us an opportunity to face our fears and to let go of them. I used to be super fearful about walking on trails. I used to be so afraid of walking like uphill, downhill. I used to be afraid, especially walking downhill. I used to be so afraid of like slipping and falling. And getting outdoors has really helped me to face that fear and to let go of it. It's also helped me to face the fear of being alone. I used to be super scared of walking alone in the outdoors. I used to be afraid of people, like weird people coming and attacking me. I used to be afraid that something would happen and I wouldn't be able to deal with it. I used to be afraid of so many things. I used to be a very fearful person. But getting outdoors alone on a regular basis has really helped me to stretch out of my comfort zone in terms of what kinds of outdoor adventures I will have. And as I've said, when you stretch out of your comfort zone in one area, this will expand in all areas of your life. And it has expanded my comfort zone in other areas of my life, both work and other stuff. It's also helped me with resilience. Because when you're hiking and you have to get to a certain destination, you got to get there. You've got to push through the pain sometimes. And sometimes you take an ibuprofen or 2 or 3 or 4 and it gets rid of the pain, and sometimes it doesn't. And sometimes, if you're walking a long distance trail, you might have physical pain day after day after day. And so, assuming you're not injured, it's just like foot pain from carrying too much weight or whatever, or maybe your body's just not used to carrying a pack, it increases resilience. It increases your resilience muscle, which again will help you with resilience in other areas of your life. This is so great. There's so much you can get out of outdoor adventures. And finally, and I think this is also really exciting and important, is it can help give you a higher tolerance to risk. I think risk is a good thing. And I maybe have been better at risk than the average person just because I've had all kinds of adventures in my life. But like I said, I've also been a fearful person. But getting myself outdoors and getting myself facing my fears and getting myself into mildly risky stuff in the outdoors has helped give me a higher risk tolerance. And again, that's like a muscle that if you've got a higher tolerance to risk in the outdoors, that will also give you a higher tolerance to risk in the indoors and other aspects of your life. And again, I think that's a good thing, because I think a lot of us will stay stuck in certain areas of our life because we're scared of the risks that come from making changes. Finally, and I'm only going to touch on this very briefly, getting outdoors will help give you greater respect for the environment. It will help you to value the beautiful things that we have, the access that we have to woodlands, to streams, to rivers, to lakes, to ocean, to all the beautiful things that our planet gives us and makes available to us. When we expose ourselves to these beautiful outdoor adventures, it will have a ripple effect in how we live our lives back home, indoors. Maybe you start to reduce plastic in your life. Maybe you start recycling more. Maybe you start paying attention to where your products are produced. I don't know. It's going to be different for everyone, but getting outdoors will increase our respect for the environment. And finally, improving physical fitness and mental health. Obviously, getting outdoors, going on a hike will improve your physical fitness, especially if you do it on a regular basis. It will help you use muscles that you don't use in other aspects of your life. And it will help you just be more fit physically, and that's always a good thing. But it's also good for mental health, like I said. Getting outdoors, especially on your own, will give you the time and space to focus on things you may not be focusing on. And that will help you make better decisions in your life. It will help you do different things in your life, have different experiences in your life, have the experiences that you want to have in your life. It will help you to create the life that you want to be living rather than the life that you just fell into because you weren't really paying attention to what was happening. So, are you excited about planning your next outdoor adventure? I really, really hope that you are. So I'm going to point you to some resources on my blog that I've written in the last couple of weeks, or last few weeks, that should help you with this. So, like I said, I've got that solo hiking for women, staying safe in the outdoors blog post, and if you have any fears about getting outdoors alone, please read that. I also have, and I'm really excited about this blog post, it's called Hiking with Autism, How to Get Outdoors When You're on the Autism Spectrum. I've been listening to this podcast for a while. You probably know I have Asperger's or high-functioning autism, and I think that getting outdoors when you are autistic can really, really help with some of the challenges that come with being autistic, but I think there's also a lot of stuff you need to think and plan in advance before you get outdoors that will help you feel safer about it. So that actually might even be really useful to people who want to get outdoors, don't have autism, but maybe they're extra fearful, because that blog post includes like a lot of things that you might not think about that will help you plan. So check that one out. And again, I'm linking to all of these in the show notes. Then I've got my ultimate gear and packing lists. I've got my ultimate gear and packing list for one-day hikes and walks. Got my ultimate gear and packing list for multiple-day hikes and walks. And then I've got my ultimate gear and packing list for backpacking and car camping. And I really am very happy with these lists. I think they'll be really helpful in helping you to plan your own outdoor adventures and to make sure that you bring everything, because I have forgotten things sometimes. Finally, I have written 2 really exciting blog posts. One is called Walking the South Downs Way, Planning Your Adventure, and then Walking the Ridgeway, Planning Your Ridgeway Walk. And both of those help you to plan a long distance adventure, either on the South Downs Way or on the Ridgeway. And I think I'm probably going to do a generic one on how to plan your long distance walk, because I want to create a resource that people can use and apply to any long distance trail. But those will give you an idea. Now, if you have any questions about planning your first either solo adventure or with other people, please drop me a line and let me know. You can email me at holly@hollyworton.com, and I'm happy to help if I can. So that is it. I hope you found this episode interesting and useful. And I hope that it inspires you to get outdoors and have your own long-distance adventures, because not only are they good for your body and your mind, they are also excellent for your personal growth. So thank you so much for listening. Remember to visit hollyworton.com/364 for the show notes on this episode. And remember, in a couple of weeks, I will have the transcript for this episode live and on the website, which means that if you want to refer to it, you will have that available to you. So thank you so much for listening. Have a great week. And please let me know about your long distance adventure. If you were inspired by this episode to plan something new and exciting, let me know. I would love to hear what it is. Thank you so much. Thanks so much for listening to Into the Woods with Holly Worton. You can find more information about today's episode, including links for topics that were discussed, at hollyworton.com. That's HOLLYWORTON.com. If you'd like to connect with other listeners and get support on your journey, I would love for you to join my private community on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Holly Worton. That's patreon.com/Holly Worton. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to seeing you next week.